Good afternoon. I am Councilwoman Jiza Page, Chair of the Recreation and Parks Committee, and I would now like to call to order the Recreation and Parks Committee public hearing on this Wednesday, May 18th, 2016, beginning at 3 p.m. Thank you for all who are in attendance. Thank you, Director Collins, for coming today. The purpose of our committee hearing is to go over and review the legislation that will be appearing on future City Council agendas under the Recreation and Parks Committee. I would now like to go ahead and give the hearing over to Director Collins to go through our proposed legislation.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Page. Thank you so much for having me here today. Happy to go through some of the legislation that we'll be bringing forward, and what I'll do is I'll go through each piece of legislation with some description, and of course, if you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to stop and let me know. The first piece on the consent agenda for the commission this month was the Goodell Schiller Park column restoration project. This is to authorize the expenditure of $41,000 in the contract with Mullen Weithman, and this is to prepare the plans because these are very specific. These columns are historic features of the park, and we want to make sure that we do this right. So this is to authorize the department to enter into contract with this firm for the plans for the column restoration at these two sites. The second piece of legislation is the auditor, or what we call an auditor certificate, which is our a method of setting up an account so that we can do minor improvements along, with different projects, but in this case for our Greenways capital improvement program. So anytime we have a small project that maybe a bench or there's a repair project that needs to be done, these funds are utilized for that. There might be a ramp, might be some type of access point that needs to be generated, so we'll utilize these funds. The next two pieces are related. The COAAA Senior Farmers Market contract and Farmers Market legislation 1103 and 1104 through the amount of $195,000. This establishes a card program through a grant from the Recreation and Parks Grant Fund for the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging to use for their Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. If you're familiar with this program, this is something we do each year where seniors get a card that they're able to take to, a voucher card they're able to take to local farmers markets and utilize so that they have fresh produce and maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Excuse me, Director. On the card program, is that something that the seniors pay for, or is it subsidized through this?
I believe it's subsidized through this grant program through in the COAAA agency. The next one is our contract with CAPA for the operation and program of the Festival Latino. This is something that we started in 2008. We worked with CAPA to contract with them to lead the Festival Latino, and they have done a phenomenal job. This is funding that in total will be $40,000 for that program and for them to lead that. And this is a renewal of the contract. Like I said, we've been doing it since 2008, and we're real pleased with the services they're able to provide.
Excuse me, Director. Do you know where the festival will be held this year?
It's my understanding we're going to stay with the Genoa Park location. So we'll be right there between COSI and Genoa Park on the river.
Okay, thank you. And would you happen to know if there's an entrance fee for the festival?
No, my understanding is that festival is open to the public.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is for our contract extension for ActiveNet. As you know and are aware, we use ActiveNet as our registration software for the public. So when you log on to our website, you can log in and register for a class or a program, and you do that through ActiveNet. We contract with a company for the maintenance fees of that software every year to help us keep it updated and compliant with all the technology that we need, whether it's mobile technology and or the PCS compliance. So ActiveNet, we've had good success. We had one little hiccup last year, but they worked very closely with us this year to make sure that it went smoothly, and so we're pleased to continue that contract, and that's for $120,000 to renew that. The next piece I'm excited is to authorize the department to enter into contract with DLZ. This is to finalize the permit plans for roadway access to a canoe and kayak launch on the Olentangy River Road and King Avenue access point. We're very excited. The state of Ohio has marked the Olentangy River as a dedicated water trail. And so this is one of those access points that will help folks get via kayak or canoe down through the river. And I want to mention too, in this case, DLZ has contributed a significant amount of labor to this project. And so this is paying for the final portion of that permit process, the plan development process, excuse me. The next piece is our sports courts. This is an annual project that we do as well. We invest every year. You know, it's one of our goals is to upgrade 5 neighborhood parks and update a community park every year. And some of that is just includes updating the infrastructure. And we have a lot of infrastructure in our parks, including tennis courts, basketball courts, inline hockey rinks, those types of things. So this contract was with M&D Blacktop for the repair and replacement of sports courts at Milo Grogan, Wolf Park, and in addition of a new half basketball court at Nafsker Park. So we're excited about that. I know that we've had some tennis folks that have been really interested in seeing Wolf Park get improved.
Yes,
So.
and Director, could you speak briefly on how your department determines like which parks will receive the improvements for the year?
So we obviously have a long list of maintenance projects that we have and need to keep going. We work with our facilities and maintenance department to identify the areas that are in the most need, and then we prioritize based on most need. Eventually we'll have a scoring system where you'll be able to come in and see a clear score that if it's above this line, it's scheduled for maintenance. Right now we work very closely with on-site inspections with our maintenance team.
And one other question. I know that the community near actually Nafsker Park as well as Wolf Park have had those concerns like by the tennis courts, and I'm sure they would be very happy about the half basketball court. Have you had that communication with neighbors and residents as well?
Yes, they're very aware. They were interested in seeing additional court spaces added, and we're looking into that right now as we speak. But for now, this will get us started. The next is just a modification of an existing contract. This is our HVAC Improvements contract. It was for $3.4 million, and we're just modifying it. So it's the existing project that we already had, and we're just updating the amount.
Excuse me, Director. Is that for improvements on all of the centers that are currently undergoing the HVAC work?
Yes, that's each year we budget a certain amount of money to impact, to change the HVAC. So familiar with Douglas Recreation Center just completed and opened this week, which was an HVAC project. We were able to do a couple other things there at that center. We are starting design work on Indian Mound, which is also an HVAC related project. So it's those types of projects. I think last count we identified 8 centers that still don't have air conditioning and 6 centers that have partial air conditioning.
And I would also like to thank Deputy Director Wachowski for joining us as well. Thank you.
The next 2 pieces of legislation are related, and I'll share. We're going to be beginning what we call a program-style budget feature in some of our operational and capital funding. And what this says is set up programs so that we can begin replacement plans for different components. So here we have a furniture, the next one is equipment. And what this is intended to do is, for example, at Douglas, when we went to open Douglas, we didn't have funding set aside to replace the furniture that was there. And we had some donated furniture, some that needed to be, much needed to be replaced, was well loved. And so what this will do is set up an account that's a routine maintenance account that each year we can look and say, just similar to our sport court initiative where we have the most need, we replace that furniture and it becomes a cycle so that we can continue to do that. That's tables, chairs that we use for classes. That's lounge furniture for parents and families when they're waiting on a program or a class. It's a broad range. And then the next one after that is the recreation parks equipment. And that's a little different in the sense that what that is that might be for our game tables. It might be for volleyball stanchions, large pieces that have long lifespans, not necessarily, this isn't basketballs and ping pong paddles. This is the longer term, larger pieces of equipment to replace. You know, our game rooms are very popular for our community residents to come in, get out of the heat and socialize together. And this is an example of how we would just plan on the replacement of some of those as they would get well loved as well.
And Director, Those two ordinances, is that something like a new initiative that you've undertaken?
Yeah, that's a new initiative. Actually, with the help of Deputy Director Rakowski, we've started to put plans in place to proactively budget for replacement.
Great, I think that's awesome, so thank you.
And then our next piece of legislation, we every year submit a long list of events that request they're events that we host in our parks, not necessarily that we operate or manage. There are two of them that we do, Jazz and Ribs Fest being one of those. But events throughout the summer that are hosted in our parks that are operated by outside entities, nonprofit partners, private partners, but partners that nonetheless would like to request to make alcohol available at their event through sales. And typically it's for a fundraising purpose to help pay for the event. Pride Festival, ComFest, those types of things. So we bring that legislation forward every year. As you know, we brought our long list at the last meeting, the last legislative agenda. Two events joined on after that legislation already went through, and one is the Nightlight 614 Summer Outdoor Movie Series, and the other one is the Bike the Sea Bus event. And so we're adding these two events to that list.
And do you have any additional information about either one of those events?
You know, those are outside sponsored events. For example, the 614 Outdoor Movie Series is a private entity who is contracting to rent space and have the movie available to the public to pay for an admission fee. So they'll be available on their website in both of these cases because they're private nonprofit events. Or private events, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
And since we're granting consent because we are the owner of the property.
Correct.
And the event sponsor applies directly to the state of Ohio for the liquor permit?
That's correct. We do not we do not make it legal for them. We just allow them on our space, and the state has to have permission to say that we're giving them permission before they'll grant the license.
And is there any monetary cost to the city for this?
No, there's no monetary cost for this application process.
Thank you.
And then our final piece of legislation, I'm very pleased to tell you that for, I think, the fourth year in a row, the Columbus Recreation and Parks Department is a benefactor of a grant through the National Recreation and Parks Association in the amount of $10,000. And this is to expand the ability of our summer food service program to serve our residents of Columbus. These grant funds will be used to help program staff that will serve the meals as well as provide activities in our meal centers so that kids will have a destination to be as well as provided with a healthy meal. This grant this ordinance, I'm sorry, is the acceptance of that fund and being able to authorize the expenditure of it, which is the $10,000 for those purposes.
And thank you for that. I had the opportunity last summer to tour some of the community centers and see the success of the food program. Is the food program offered at all of the centers throughout the summer?
So, yes, all of our centers will have a food service site. We actually operate 250 food service sites or sponsor 250 food service sites throughout Columbus. We work with our partners throughout the region to make sure that there's even more than that available in the region, but 250 sites in the city of Columbus. Last year, we gave out 650,000 meals between our 250 sites as well as our mobile food truck, which has the opportunity to get into neighborhoods where we don't have a site set up. So we'll be carrying that program out this year as well.
And are there any financial stipulations for the young people receiving the meals? Any resident in our city is able to go into our centers and access the program. Thank you.
Yep. That's all the legislation we have for you on this particular agenda. I didn't know if you had any other further questions.
Yes, I have just a couple more. If we could go back to the first piece that you spoke about, the Goodell and Schiller Park columns restoration. Could you briefly talk about the current condition of the columns?
Sure, let me find that. Yes, hold on one second if you don't mind. Just get my information on it. So the Friends of Goodell Park have worked with the Rec and Parks Department on the restoration of the south and northwest entry gates of Goodell Park. The east entry and columns at Goodell Park are over 100 years old and are in need of restoration to stabilize the columns and stop deterioration. In 2012, the department worked with, at the request of the German Village Society, worked with a contractor to evaluate the 4 sets of columns located at Schiller Park. And the columns dated back, because of course those columns are dated back to the 1900s, have been in need of restoration for several years, but repairs have not been possible because of lack of funding. So Goodell and Schiller, of course, are the 2 oldest sites in the city, in addition to Livingston Park, our 3 historic sites. And these columns have been in place for a number of years. And, you know, wear and tear, salt on the road, all types of deterioration impact the grouting, the stone, and this type of restoration will come back through and help with that and maintain those columns for the long-term future of the park.
Thank you so much, Director. And you actually answered my second question. I know that both Goodell and Schiller Park have very active neighborhood associations and friends who work within the park. And I'm happy to see that you are working with them to come up to a resolution to help restore those columns.
Absolutely.
So thank you. And if there is no more legislation, we do not have any public speakers for today. Again, I would like to thank you, Director Collins, for coming today and for going over the legislation that will be on our agendas in the next coming month. Thank you, Deputy Director Rakoski, as well as Brandy Braun, who is here today. I would also like to thank my team, Rolanda Hampton and Sherry Martin, for your efforts and work to put this hearing together, as well as John Oswald, who works with us in the Legislative Research Office for Recreation and Parks. And of course, we thank CTV and all of our listening and viewing audience. This concludes our Recreation and Parks Committee public hearing, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.